Yeah, I think that pursue what you want to pursue, and we all know that life can be kind of short and things could change, and all of a sudden. And make sure you're pursuing what's good for you and your family and what makes you happy. And realize that no time like the present. Kind of do what you need to do. I know that there's been people I know in groups I play with where they've made giant changes to their life. Like they quit their job and they sold their house and they did this thing. They're like, well, everything could change tomorrow. I'm going to travel the world now. And, like I'm not going to like upset everything so I can't get by, but they set themselves up so that they can do that now instead of waiting until like years later, because years later might not come.
Yeah, amen to that,
So,
brother. And what to say? Have you thought about like expanding your YouTube channel in a way, kind of like covering different videos? Because obviously, I don't know if they changed the rules recently, where like if you do eventually hit that 1,000 subscriber mark, you then could monetize some of your drum covers, give or take here or there, and then just split it between the artist and you. I'm not too sure about that, but I know with like say videos like these, for instance, that do music interviews or reviews and stuff like that, those kind of things get monetized. So that's why I think any of those, I don't know, big music channels that have like thousands, if not millions of subscribers, they get that because they diversify in a specific way. Would you think about doing something similar down the road?
possibly. I hadn't really thought about that from the angle of like being able to monetize due to numbers of subscribers or views or people, but I was thinking more along, or at least for now, trying to maybe add some stuff in the channel that's not just about doing covers of songs I want to do that get the YouTube license if they don't get blocked. Maybe doing some stuff maybe doing covers of stuff from bands that I've played in and recorded with. It's where that wouldn't be an issue at all because I'm on the thing. I'm on the recording, unless the micro label decided to block it, which that wouldn't happen probably. Or doing just improvisational stuff, drum solo stuff, or giving examples of how to play certain grooves. I thought about doing that. I haven't expanded because my time's been kind of taken up. I've been busy, but I have thought about expanding to doing those kind of things.
Well, I'll leave it up to you then, but it seems like you do keep yourself pretty busy as well, so it'd be interesting to see where your channel goes afterwards. So best luck on your YouTube journey there, mate. But I did talk for almost an hour right here, and still got a good number of questions here. But I guess out of all the drummers, I guess all the people you have probably listed in this interview too, I guess who would you consider has been your biggest influence? Or if you have like any others, just kind of list them off as well.
Okay. I can't pick just one. So
it's never just one. You always got to have multiple.
It's impossible.
Yeah.
All right.
So I might have to rephrase that question.
I kind of made a list. So I'll just go through because it's different styles in no particular order. Elvin Jones, Tony Williams, Keith Moon, John Bonham, Neil Peart, Stuart Copeland, Prairie Prince of the Tubes, Alex Van Halen, Tommy Taylor, Ringo Starr, Benny Benjamin, Richard Allen, Jack Ashford, Bill Bruford, Mitch Mitchell, Hal Blaine, Manu Katché, Sly Dunbar, Tony Allen. Those all I would list as major influences on me musically and as a drummer.
That's your
and
top 10.
There's more, but yeah, my top 10. Top 10. Is that 10? That's more than 10, right?
Was it? I honestly wasn't counting, to be honest, but it sounded like it was top 10, to be honest.
Yeah, that was more like 15 or something, but yeah, those are the top ones.
Fair enough. I guess you did mention about your Rush cover group, so I thought maybe Peart had inspired you in some sort of way.
Oh yeah, very much so. Very much so.
So
yeah, he was amazing. He the thing that was so mind blowing about him is like how meticulous. How he was able to be so tight and reproduce stuff, and it's not like he didn't make mistakes. I saw him live in concert. He would make some mistakes, but they'd be kind of minor mistakes where if there was like 1,000 things happening, it'd be like one thing and nobody would notice practically. I do remember seeing them play in Charlotte, North Carolina back in the 80s. I don't remember what happened, but I remember that he messed up and you could see him mouthing an expletive that begins with F and ends with K and going, and he looked really frustrated, but then Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson were kind of laughing at it. It was funny because it was just one thing. It was like, oh, you made a mistake, and he probably never makes mistakes. But I mean, yeah, he was amazing. He do stuff like, some people focus on twirling sticks and theatrical stuff. I haven't done that as much. I don't do the twirling stick the whole time. But he would do this thing where he'd bounce the stick off the drum and flip up in the air, and then he'd catch it. I don't know if you ever saw that, but I saw him do it. He did it. It would go up like 30 feet. And he wouldn't even look, and then he'd catch it. And if it was reversed, he'd just flip it real quick and start playing. And he just had so much skill, and the fact that he could write lyrics and be able to tour for that many years and do all this stuff, and go through all the stuff he did, just personally, losing his wife and a kid and everything, like. Very inspirational, amazing artist. Give him total props. He's great.
Absolutely. May he rest in peace as well.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
Actually, I did not know about that, the whole thing where he was just like bounce it up in the air and it was like go up so high and just catch it at some point too. There was actually, I'm always terrible with like trying to remember certain drummers' names because this one was actually, it was more Hispanic, and I'm sure he knows because he would always kind of flip the stick at certain points or he'd bounce it off as something as well. And he was on Drumeo. So Andrew Rudy knows the drummer I'm referring to because he actually did a nice little reaction video about him too. But I'm sure people are going to mention it in the comments too. So people, please don't yell at me. I'm terrible with names at times. Even like how I was in the beginning too when I mistakenly thought it was Cohn instead of Kong. The very last name. So sorry about that.
No worries. Man, that's all good.
No, but that's good too. So it's actually extensive list too because normally, I think people always do like top 5, to be honest, or maybe at most they'll stop at top 10. So I think yours is the most extensive so far. So that might be an achievement right there that people are going to have to beat at some point. So,
well, and it's all different styles, right? Like, there's like, I mean, what can you say about people like John Bonham or Keith Moon, right? Great. I wanted to be John Bonham when I was a kid. I feel like I can play, if I want to, that style pretty accurately and all. But that guy, very distinctive, had a certain groove. Even though he played really hard, he's still grooved. And I wanted to mention just a couple of different people, like the drummers from Motown. Those guys, how mind-blowing are those guys? They put down all those grooves for all those tracks, for all those great people that got the spotlight, and they didn't even get any money. The Funk Brothers, they called themselves the Funk Brothers, and they got like, oh, here's your $180. And that's like right now, I think around the world on some oldie station or somewhere on YouTube or whatever, there's the Supremes or the Temptations or Jackson 5, whatever it is, Stevie Wonder. These tracks are being laid down, and like those guys should be they should have been millionaires, right? But they just got a fee, and but they laid down those grooves that, or who else? Like I don't know if you know Manu Katché, the drummer Manu Katché, who's on tour with Peter Gabriel this year. He great drummer, like very emotional playing, uses a lot of cymbals and splashes and things. And he played with Sting on Soul Cages. And one of the things I think is the funniest about that guy is he's this great drummer, and Sting wanted him to go on tour, right? He's like, okay, so we're going to go on tour. You play drums with me. And he goes, no, I'm sorry, Sting. I'm too busy to go on tour with you. I'm playing with Peter Gabriel. Which I think is hilarious because it's like who's too busy to go on tour with Sting? You know what I mean? It's like, but he had a better gig, I guess, or whatever. But that guy's amazing. He's a big influence on me. And I mentioned another drummer that I don't know if you're familiar with, Prairie Prince of the Tubes. Do you know who that is? Or the Tubes? You know about the Tubes?
I want to say my dad. Maybe I mentioned it at some point, but trust me, to be honest, there's way too many names even to memorize, to be honest.
Yeah,
I mean, a lot of the drummers, I probably don't even know most of their names from half the drum covers I do, to be honest. I just know because One, they probably referenced his name a good number of times, and two, it's probably because I listened to your music a good number of times. I eventually looked up who the name of it was. So, unfortunately, I think the Tubes is part of that list. I have not heard about you, or I have not looked up the names to see like what the names of the musicians are. But I'm sorry, but go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to mention he's one of those drummers that's not a household name, and a lot of people don't know who he is. I like the Tubes. They're from the Bay Area. They're kind of weird. They're one of those bands that had sort of a self-image problem until they came out with that hit in the 80s. But that because they were like a prog rock band that could play like any style. They could be all theatrical and do. It's like you couldn't pigeonhole them, right? They were kind of like a rock band, right? But they could play anything, and they're really. It's almost like listening to Frank Zappa or something like that. But anyway, that drummer, he could play any style. He could play like stuff that would swing. He could play Latin stuff. Could play the hell out of rock for sure. He could play like really progressive stuff with a bunch of different time signatures. Really good. And he played with the Tubes. And he also played with XTCs on that album Skylarking, which is a big famous album for XTC. Big thumbs up for that. It's one of my favorite bands. And he played with Todd Rundgren also. Boeing, I went and saw them. The Tubes came to town, and they did a meet and greet afterwards, and I got to meet him. And I was like, hey, you're big influences on my playing. It's great to meet you. And he was very cordial and let me take a selfie and stuff and sign my record. And it was cool. It's like it's fun meeting people. I've had the chance to meet a lot of famous drummers and take some lessons from some of them. Like I've taken lessons from whether it's a one-off lesson or a couple. I studied with Chad Wackerman. I took 2 lessons from him it was through Skype. It wasn't Zoom, Skype. That's why I have Skype on my computer. I had to get it because this was years ago. And then I also locally in person took 1 lesson apiece from I took a lesson from Alan White, played with Yes, and he played on Imagine, John Lennon. And I took a lesson from Danny Serafine of Chicago, original Chicago drummer. Really, really good guy. He was adamant. He's like, what do you want to learn from me? This isn't going to be just this, like you said, you got to go take a lesson from the drummer. What do you want to learn from me? You're going to learn something. And we worked on like the endings of songs. I was like, how do you end a song and do kind of a bombastic kind of thing with fills and all? And he just kind of went through. He's like, well, this is what I do. And you know, he was pretty cool. He was pretty cool.
I was like, man, you gotta write a damn book from all the experiences you had too, from like being like a punk guy all the way to like doing Brazilian sort of music, meeting all these sort of drummers here and there, even like taking lessons from some of them too. I'm thinking like, man, this could be a damn book, man. To be honest. So I mean, that's pretty interesting.
I've never thought about that. I've been fortunate to have a lot of different experiences for sure. It's just because I'm so into music. I love music. It's such a focus for me that I've just had all these experiences that I've gone out there and I've been lucky enough to pursue it.
You know what? I don't know if it was kind of the same thing with you, but it was like, for me, I felt like going into business was like the career path to go, and then be like, do that for 40 or some years, retire, be happy to live off whatever you've made throughout your entire working career, then eventually just move on, and then that's it afterwards. But then along the way, there's something that just like clicks for some reason, in terms of like how it was with me with podcasting or with you with music. So I know you say music has always been a part of your life, but was there something that went off in your head thinking like, I could probably do something out of this too, and like see where it goes? Was it like during your teenage years? I guess you had probably already referenced it at some point, because it always seemed like your career path or the path you were originally walking on changed at some point. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'll just say this, and I'm sure there might be some people that I know that would kind of shake their heads if I say this, but if I was born earlier, even though I was born in the late 60s, oh, that's cool, whatever. If I was born even earlier and I came of age, say around when I was born, I was a teenager, then I totally would have only done music and toured with like a famous band, and that would have been my thing, because I feel like I was born too late. By the time I was a teenager and I was coming of age where I was old enough to make decisions to go do different things, it was less of a viable path. It was more of a gamble. It was harder to do. And it doesn't mean I don't pursue music. And like I said, I play professional gigs. I just feel like I always have to have something else to kind of fall back on or have a main gig that gets on. And part of it is because I've chosen the path of having a family and buying a house and living in the Seattle area. And you know what I mean? Like I could also choose to, if that hadn't happened, just only play music and go the path I was going on before. But it'd just be less certain. It'd be less comfortable, probably. I mean, not that I'm rich or wealthy or anything like that, but I do okay. I do okay. And I think it'd be a lot more of a struggle. It'd be hard to pay for things like insurance and, invest in something where you could own a house or have a retirement or, you know what I mean? That kind of a thing. It's a little bit of a trade-off, but I decided to have a family and I need some more stability. So that's why I didn't only focus on music as a career path only, but I still do it. In fact, when I was talking to my wife about doing this interview, I was looking at the question you had that said, do you have any advice? What does it say? It says, what sort of message of hope could you give to musicians out there? And you haven't asked me that yet, right?
Well, that's normally the last one. That's the last one we always like to close out with too. So,
well, okay, maybe you could ask me that one later, but that I was going to say this is related to that question though, because, I'll just take part of what I was going to say. Part of it is that you can balance out being able to pursue things and still have a life where you do other things that you need to do to be responsible or have a family or whatever. It's crazy. My life is crazy and busy and it's challenging. I'm juggling all the time, but it can be done. I'm proof because I'm doing it.
Absolutely.
You can do it.
And actually, the one question I did miss, but we'll do this one, then we'll jump to fun questions, then we'll come back to that message of hope afterwards too. But
okay.
But this one gets a little bit serious because it talks about COVID. So obviously, you said you kind of lived in the Seattle area, now going on 30 years right now. So I guess, how bad did COVID impact you, your family, and community?
Okay, it's 30 years as of like June, this last month. So COVID, the thing about that, when that started, obviously there's a lot of uncertainty and question marks. It was really scary because nobody knew what was happening exactly. But I feel like my family fared pretty well compared to a lot of people because my wife was able to, during lockdown, stay at home, be home with my kids, and they could be online and go to school that way, as hard as that was. And we were together through a lot of it. I did have to work through it because at Boeing, they did this thing called suspension of ops where they shut down everything. I mean, I remember the day when they did that because I was reading online in the Seattle Times. It said that somebody had died of it at the Boeing plant. And I said, well, there it is. Like I've been going to work and doing stuff and all of a sudden somebody died from it. And they're like, that's it, you're shut down. And so we were shut down for 2.5 weeks. But then I had to go back. And so I had to work through the whole thing. That was kind of crazy. On site. Like I can't do my job I could do reports or something, but I can't do my job calibrating things remotely from home. So that was challenging, but in the grand scheme of things, my family fared pretty well. My wife was able to stay home, like I said. We could be together. We felt pretty safe, and we figured out ways to do things together that made it so that it was kind of fun at times, or that people weren't so worried, or overall, it worked out pretty well. I think that we fared pretty well.
That's good to hear. And knowing people's stories, most of them had fared pretty well. Otherwise, some people said they had brushes with COVID too. I guess, did you have any brushes with COVID? Did you get sick at some points?
I actually didn't get it full on that I know of, because you can have it and not know, obviously. But I definitely tested full blown last October. That was the only time I got it. And so I went all that time without getting it, as far as I know, because there's no way to tell if I had it before. I will say that, so I went to Brazil this is another thing that's wild. I went on a trip to Brazil. A bunch of people in the group I play with, and I know from that scene, we went to Rio in 2020 in February for Carnival, because that's when that happens, which is like the biggest party on the planet. Not like it is, bar none. I'd argue that with anybody. The biggest party on the planet, 100%, is Carnival in Brazil. It's insane. It really is. You should experience it. But anyway, I went there to play for a street bloco, like on the street, with the master that I've been studying with, who taught me to play Caixa. And so we were there. I went attention to the news. I was just having fun visiting Brazil with people that live there and all. It was incredible. So much fun. I come back, and then all of a sudden everything goes south. But I actually got a cold when I was there. I got sick, and somebody else I know that's from Sao Paulo, he came to stay at our flat in Rio, and he was kind of sniffling and got sick. So I might have actually gotten it when I was there and not had a really serious reaction or case of it. But I have no way of knowing. There's no way I can tell. But yeah. I don't know.
You know, I was a similar way, because it happened in October, believe it or not. So me and my parents, we actually went to Nashville. That was the first time I actually had been there. So, of course, you're jumping on Broadway Street between the bars, going to see all these either cover groups or doing like maybe the Jason Aldean sort of music, or the old bluegrass style for those who had like the stand-up double bass and everything too. So, needless to say, after we came back, me and my dad both got a pretty decent. I mean, it affected me. I couldn't even play drums, to be honest. I was that tired, to be honest.
Oh, wow.
So I had to even...
Really?
Did you have to take that little medication was called Paxlovid or Paxlovid or whatever you call it?
Paxlovid? Yeah.
Did you ever take that?
No, because from when at the time I had a bout of COVID-19. I'd read that you don't want to take that unless you have such bad symptoms or you can't get rid of it, or it's this really bad situation where you're just trying to get over it quicker. You don't want to just take it just because it's uncomfortable, or something, because it could take longer to get rid of it, or it could relapse. So no, I never did.
I would say it tasted funny, to be honest. So I think that's what I remember from it. But hopefully it's water under the bridge at this point. We'll have to see what happens in the near future when we take future trips. And I'm sure you'll do the same too whenever you go back to Brazil. Or are you actually thinking of going back to Brazil anytime soon? Or...
Well, I've thought about it. It's quite the undertaking of money and time. So to fly from here, I had to take 3 flights each direction. I had to fly down to San Francisco, fly to JFK, New York, then fly to Rio, and coming back, same thing, except going through Miami instead. But anyway, I've thought about. There's a lot of people in the Brazilian music scene here, and in the group I play with. It's a giant group, by the way. They've gone. A lot of people have gone back, and Eduardo Fuentes, he keeps saying, you have to come back and you can go to this samba school. We can do this and we'll play. And so, yeah, I've thought about it. I totally want to do it. I haven't been able to swing it this year, but maybe in the next year or so, I do want to do it. I've thought about it, definitely.
It does sound fun, to be honest. Funny enough, I actually thought Oktoberfest in Germany would be the biggest party in the world, to be honest. Would you say it's a close second or something? Or
probably. I haven't been to that. And it's ironic that I haven't been to that, because in the polka band, that's the busiest time of year. We play Oktoberfest all the time. I played so many Oktoberfests. I make a lot of money playing that. Actually, it's fun. But I want to go. I bet maybe that's the second biggest party in the world, going to Oktoberfest in Munich. I'm sure that's incredible. I'd love to do that.
You and me both. So best luck on your journey. It's good to see you, mate, for COVID here, mate. Good to have you along.
All right. Of course.
So we're almost at an hour and 20 minutes right here. So let's breeze through the fun questions right here. Then we'll get to the last one, okay?
Okay. Sounds good.
So for the first one, what is your favorite drink? I don't know if you drink alcohol at all, or you kind of avoid that.
Yeah, I do. I like IPAs, like microbrews. If it's alcohol you're talking about, probably one of those. Or I don't really drink hard liquor very much. If I was going to, maybe I'd say cachaça, which is Brazilian liquor, like for caipirinha. good drink. Other than that, maybe like tea, like Assam tea is one of my favorite teas.
Technically, it's a question broken into two parts too. So, when it's favorite drink is one that's like alcohol, and then one that's non-alcoholic. So let's talk about how it goes too. So, tea is your favorite non-alcoholic drink. Is it a specific kind of tea, or is it?
Yeah. If not water, it'd be tea because pure water is like you gotta have water to live. But tea, Assam tea, which is from, I guess it's from India. It's from like an estate in India, that particular variety. But Assam tea is my favorite, bar none. I've had it when I went to England. You could get really good tea there. It was amazing. And also, it's used in Irish breakfast tea. I think that's one of the ingredients. So it's a good one.
That's interesting. Like I said, we learn something new every time when we do these interviews. So
I bet, yeah.
So for the next two, they kind of deal with your drum covers. So the first one, was there ever a song that was too tough for you to play? Did you either give up or did you come back afterwards to finish?
That one's tough for me to answer. I will say that I've got a huge list of covers that I want to do, and I think of new ones all the time. Out of the ones I've done, or was there one that was too tough to play? No, I haven't run into anything like that. There's songs just in general that I thought were too tough to play. There's a prog rock band called Gentle Giant that I was trying to learn how to play some of their stuff, and I had to come back to some of their things because it had these weird turnarounds and time signature changes that I just couldn't really wrap my head around. I had trouble with that. And one thing I'll say remember, I don't know if you remember in our conversation, I made some comment that I learned backwards about music to some degree, which is kind of weird. Like, as far as playing drums, I want to bring this up because I think it's funny. People will laugh about it. So when you're counting in music, right? If I sat here, I went 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? That's the beat. You're playing a 4/4, you're whatever. Going way, way back, I didn't know that's how music worked. So if I played music, I just play the drum parts with them. And so if I played to something like, I don't know, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Carnival 9, Part 1 or something, I didn't know how to count it. So if it went to some part in the song where it went da 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 da, and there was a pause and that had to come in, I couldn't count that. I just had to feel it and be like, you know what I mean? Because I didn't know how to do that. It wasn't until I learned about music theory that I learned how to count and play stuff and everything. Anyway, just because you know what's going on doesn't mean it's easy to play it. Then too, because some of that stuff's really advanced. So yeah, some stuff off that album Octopus, I was trying to learn how to play that. I don't know if you've ever heard Gentle Giant Octopus. You should check it out if you haven't. It's pretty cool stuff. It's old, from the 70s.
That's interesting. I have to check because my dad had a big CD collection at one point. I don't know if he still does back there. It's now a little shelf. It used to dominate that wall all the way back there because it used to be a giant shelf filled with like vinyls, cassette tapes, and CDs, all throughout his collection careers, or collection years, we should say, because I guess he did a good bit along with his stepbrother. So that was very funny. I know a lot of people kind of mentioned like Rosanna from Toto.
Yeah.
So I know people kind of brought that up. And
that's a hard one to do for sure. To get the right feel.
I think I know it was Whiplash. I think that was actually from the movie. I don't know if it was an actual song. I thought it was maybe a movie. It was called Whiplash.
Yeah,
I think it was.
Yeah, it's a movie.
Yeah, and then it's about it because every single song including like what you were talking about earlier when you heard, they're all a little bit challenging in their own way. I know there's some songs that were at least a little bit easier because they just keep the beat real simple too. I know with like AC/DC and like what you mentioned earlier too. So there was that, and you had mentioned earlier that you were self-taught. So I was curious. Did you learn music theory at some point and then kind of go forward with it, feeling like, okay, this isn't 4/4, that sort of thing? Or do you base it off memorization and feel? So that was a good answer. So that's all good.
Yeah, I would say it's really important. Like I still always fall back to feel and listening. That's the biggest stuff, listening and the feel. more than anything, even if you know the theory and how to count something out, because if you're reading something, you're kind of more in your head, what's more cerebral, that it all comes down to, that's just a roadmap. So it's much more important. Like listening is like music's listening, right? It's like everything is that, the feel and listening. It all comes down to that, no matter what the theory is and how you're looking at it.
Absolutely. And I guess out of all the drum covers you have done, or I guess have planned for the near future, which drum cover would you consider to love the most?
Not sure how to answer that. So I haven't done all that many covers. I think I've only got about 40 covers or 30 something covers on my channel.
I think it's at 36. So I think I checked out last night just to get a little study in before jumping on this interview.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I think I saw you made a comment on one of the ones that I did too. The Aussie one.
The over mountain.
I didn't reply to it yet. I will. Thanks for commenting on that one. That's a fun one. That particular lineup. Those two albums, the first album and Diary of a Madman. Those two albums are my favorite of Ozzy's because of the band, because of Randy Rhoads especially, and Lee Kerslake, Bob Daisley, rhythm section, just amazing. But getting back to your question, so if I had to pick a favorite one out of what I've done, it might be either Invisible Sun, just because I felt like I got kind of a good feel of how to do that with that weird doing the backbeat on the tom-tom, and that's all that's going on throughout the verses. And with You Keep Me Hanging On, which I was shocked when I put that up there and it started getting all these views. I was like, what the hell? This doesn't even have any drum fills or anything. It's just all groove. But there's people out there that like Motown, I guess. And it's about groove. And I feel like I know how to groove. I do know how to have a feel. I don't just sit there and go, well, the drum part's just this thing. He's just hitting the snare or whatever. No. It's about the feel and the groove is like everything. Because you can play the same thing many different ways. And if it doesn't have the feel and the groove, it's not happening, basically, My opinion. This is my opinion.
No, I think that's actually spot on, to be honest, because I think people always tend to feel like, oh, he's just hitting a bunch of cymbals, a hi-hat here, and then just doing it to make it for effect, to be honest. No, that's how a drummer feels, to be honest. And
yeah,
it gets extremely tough when you get to the higher, heavier metal music, to be honest. That's a completely different ballgame, which I think it would take a lot longer, so we'll just leave it at that, to be honest. We'll save that for a different time.
Okay.
And the last of the fun questions, what is currently your favorite song or a song that you've been listening to a good bit recently?
That's a tough one. I don't really have a favorite song.
I'm going to do another top 15 sort of list right there.
It's like, I don't know. It's like when I sit down and listen to stuff, like I have a vinyl collection. I listen to stuff on my turntable, but I also listen to a lot of stuff through a DAC on my, like digitally. I have Tidal. I listen to stuff that way because it sounds pretty good. It could be anything. I could be listening to Steely Dan, or I could be listening to, old Zeppelin, or I could be listening to, sort of new wavy stuff, or I don't know. I don't know how I'd answer that, because here's the problem. Like, not to be wishy-washy, but I listen to everything. So I just listen to whatever I feel like at the moment. I don't really have like a favorite thing entirely that I listen to. It's sort of all over the place. It's like I could give you, like, I could talk about like there's all these drum covers I want to do, and I could talk about like this, like a list of those, like different songs that I want to do there that I end up listening to because I'm thinking about how I'm going to cover it or something. I don't know if that would be good. There's stuff by like Yes and the Pretenders and the Talking Heads, and but then I've also got other stuff that's I don't know. I'm looking at this and I'm seeing that a lot of my stuff is kind of dated sounding, because it must be because of my demographic, my age. But most of it is older. Most of it's from last century. To be honest, it's not all that new. Although I was thinking about doing a cover of like Happy by Pharrell Williams, or like something like that. That doesn't really answer your question. I like
Sadly, unfortunately, no, because I think you just kind of listed all the ones you.
I like a lot of jazz too. I recently Blue Note Records came out with. I'm not into repressings of vinyl much, but the Blue Note repressings they just came out with are stellar. They're all from original analog tapes, and they're albums that if you look them up on Discogs or somewhere, they're super expensive. Like they're $1,000 to get a copy of one of these albums. Like I can't really afford that. I don't know about you, but you could buy one of these for like $23 brand new, and it's the closest you'll get to having that album brand new, and it sounds like it. It's so I've been listening to a lot of Blue Note records or jazz records. So that's some of my favorite stuff. There. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, no, I know. I gotta understand people who want like in a sort of way like diversify their like music sort of taste, for instance. And I guess it was easier for you because obviously you've been exposed to numerous genres and let alone played in them as well. So I can see why you would list all the above if we want to just circle D, all the above, to be honest. So
it's kind of like that, yeah.
Well, that's kind of how it is too. And in fact, most people, some to see, they have like a variety of songs they at least want to list as their favorite. Other times it's like right off the bat. So, but it's good though too. It's actually good to get a little chit chat, see like what sort of arty music you're into, or like what are songs you really like. So it's diversifying in a way. If we just want to keep it the same word I've been using, to be honest. So I'll just keep it like that. So,
all right.
So we are down to the last question. Before we jump into that, did you have any questions for me or any final words you want to say before we jump into it?
So how often do you do your podcasts? Like, do you do it like once a week or a couple of these so that you can have them all edited to put them out?
You mean more along the lines of how many podcast interviews I do on a specific day?
Yeah.
It varies. Recently, actually, last week I actually interviewed Vox and Sticks. They're actually a cover band, but they're more remote. So they're doing it all virtual, to say the least. So I think they used like Zoom, or I had to probably dig back into it again, but they strictly do it through like Zoom and like those sort of products. And then they just put all the music together and then just put it on YouTube or whatever other social media that they're using. But they had created this group that helped like indie musicians out. So it used to be, it would vary between maybe 1, 2, at the most 3. So nowadays I like to draw the line at 3 because I don't want to kind of overload my brain, to be honest. So
yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, it is, especially when interviews like these tend to like take an hour or 2 at most. So
right.
Especially when we start talking about a lot of things that we have in common or this and that. One thing leads to another. So you can see why. So that's why we draw the line at 3 and then just go from there. So recently now with all these indie musicians and some people who started following me who are also musicians, or whether they're like you who are just drummers that are part of cover groups or actually are part of bands or whatever, the list has pretty much expanded at this point. It's now just no longer just simply drummers on YouTube who have a channel regardless of what the size of it is. So as of now, 3 is going to be the limit, but I think now it's at least picking up pace too. So it's going to be interesting going forward. But I release 1 per week, and if they're like over an hour long, I'll split them into 2 parts just to make it easy on people. Otherwise, if it's less than an hour, then I just do the whole video and just post it all on that one particular day. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Cool.
I guess, do you have anything else, or should we go ahead and jump into the last one?
Trying to think. Because you'd also like asked about like a setup too that I use. I was just going to say that like I use a Zoom camera to capture the video and the sound from a mixing board with drum mics at the same time, because I found that that's the easiest way to sync stuff. And then I just add camera angles and sync it in Adobe Premiere Pro.
It was more the sort of gear that you use, because with acoustic sets, you need all sorts of microphones too. So I guess just real quick, what microphones do you use? And obviously, you mentioned about the cameras and editing software. So, what microphones do you use?
Oh, I've got so basically I have some dynamics and condensers. So I've got a snare mic, a bass drum mic, a mic for floor tom, and two overheads. So I've got a SM57 on the snare, a Beta 52 on the kick, Sennheiser 421 on the floor tom that captures cymbal too, and toms a little, and two AKG C3000s overhead. They go to a Mackie mixer. That's how I can capture the drum sounds. And then I do a track on my iPad from streaming service or whatever, and I actually go through a DAC. I use a Dragon Firefly, AudioQuest Firefly Red, or Dragonfly Red, and I use that to go into the Mackie board to capture the track. And that's probably overkill, because it probably doesn't matter how the quality of the track. It's probably going to already sound good enough, but makes it sound a little bit better, I think, that way.
That's interesting, because I think there's always some sort of gear that people use in terms of, because I've heard people mention about Moises, which kind of I say really tones it down. I don't think it removes, say, the drum track specifically, but
yeah,
I think it lowers it to such an extent that now people will only hear your drums. So I don't know if you're familiar with Moises.
I've heard of it. I haven't looked into it or used it really, but I have heard of it.
It is interesting. I don't know if I know a friend of mine who's at least trying to help me out with it, but I'm thinking, like, I don't know. I kind of really like the way I've been rolling, as long as, like, my drums can at least stand out so people can at least know what I'm doing. So I don't know, but I do got some ideas of harder drum covers to come. They're like from Swedish progressive groups like Opeth, for instance. And,
wow.
So
cool.
So everyone stay tuned for that. How much I will spoil to my audience out there. All right.
I'll check it out. Sounds good.
It hasn't come out yet, but it's at least an idea in the work. So
yeah,
that's why I say stay tuned. So, all right. And it was about it. We didn't talk about this one, but I guess the process of making a drum cover from like start to finish. So it just seems like, do you pick the song randomly, or do you just simply just find a song you like one day and just want to cover it?
It's mostly the latter. I have a list of songs I want to cover, because I know hundreds, if not thousands, of songs. I know so many songs that I could play, and most of them I could just play just from memory. I have a really good memory of arrangements. But there's specific things I want to do, and I've had people actually say, "Hey, can you play this or can you play that?" But it's sort of like, if I don't already know it and I have to learn it, I'm probably not going to do it, because I've got this giant list of stuff I already want to do. So most of the time, I just pick something out of that list, and then I go set up my gear, turn things on, make sure everything's set the way it's supposed to be, and adjusted cameras level. So it's a lot, actually. And then I might just go through it kind of roughly to make sure, I might just do it, just turn it on, just do everything and record it, or I might go through it mostly like in one track or something, one take, or one time, and then try to do the one take. So that way I can minimize having to redo starting and stopping. And then I take all the stuff and import it, and then I do use Adobe Premiere Pro. But so one thing I found that's interesting that I didn't expect when I was doing this, that's a hassle, is when you play with a group, somebody sits there and counts off the piece usually, right? And then you come in. It's not always me. There's one group I play with where the band leader will count it off. It's like, whatever, that's fine. The drummer doesn't always have to count it off, but usually me or who's the leader. So, but when you're doing a track and you're setting it, if you sit there and it's like it's doing its thing and then the drums come in, whatever, right? It's easy. But if it's not, and there's a pickup or an anacrusis and it comes in, you're going to have to do it several times. Like when I did We Are Family, I did a partial of that one just to check my drum setup. And it comes in with it's like, so it comes in the middle of a measure, right? You try just pushing the button and just doing that and doing it the first time. It's not going to happen. You're going to have to sit there and do it like about, I don't know, a few times before you're going to get it right. And then when you get it, then you keep playing and you record it. But I didn't know that was going to happen when I did this. Like that happens with a lot of things. In fact, there's some things that I had trouble recording only because of that, not because I couldn't play it or it's too hard or anything else, just syncing with starting it. Because also when you hit start, when you're streaming, sometimes it's just bam and it's on, and other times it's like this and then it comes in, and there's no rhyme or reason as to what that's going to be. So I just wanted to mention that because that's one of the challenges of doing this, is this funny little thing that you have to deal with.
Or if you don't like have like a little count in too, and it's like the drums just start right there, whether it's like the simple hit with a bass pedal, for instance, or it like jumps right into it for whatever reason. I say those are a little bit tricky too. That's why I think Moises, for one thing, really helps out with like giving the timing in. So I think that's one of the perks about it. So
yeah, that'd help a lot. Or another one is like, so you're streaming and you're hitting something. So what if it starts right away? So it's going to go da 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 like right away. Well, if you have to go da 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 like that, if you're sitting here doing this, hitting a track, it's kind of hard to be like da da da. You know what I mean? It's like the timing. That it's, I know it's interesting.
But to each his own too. So some people are able to do it, some people are not. So and we just have to survive and adapt and overcome.
Yes,
that's a big saying. So all right. So, Eric, we are almost out of time right here, so we'll go ahead and jump into the last question right here. But
okay, shoot.
You already know what it is, so let's go ahead and just reiterate it again. So, what sort of message of hope could you give to musicians and people out there as we try to move past COVID?
So as far as moving past COVID, I think that's a little bit different than what I thought the question was. I thought it was more about like
it could still be like the point you mentioned earlier, but if you want to tie it in as well, I mean, so I didn't mention earlier about I'm still following my dreams because I kind of stuck to it. I could have went on a different path or something like that. So that's kind of the way I took it. I don't know if you were wording it along that ways or interpreting it differently, but
yeah, I think I interpreted it differently. I didn't think it was coming out of COVID. I didn't see that part. But if that's what it is, then I think that pursue what you want to pursue. And we all know that life can be kind of short and things could change, all of a sudden. And make sure you're pursuing what's good for you and your family and what makes you happy. And realize that, no time like the present, kind of do what you need to do. I know that there's been people I know in groups I play with where they've made giant changes to their life. Like they quit their job and they sold their house and they did this thing. They're like, well, everything could change tomorrow. I'm going to travel the world now. And, I'm not going to upset everything so I can't get by, but they set themselves up so that they can do that now, instead of waiting until years later, because years later might not come. It's one of those things. I can see that. I can see why somebody would do that. But the original way I thought the question was worded had to do with what I was talking about before, trying to balance out your life with all the stuff you have to do and trying to learn how to do things that are difficult and all can be easy to be frustrated and give up and just want to kind of rest on your laurels and go, well, I can play this thing. This is easy, or I don't have to try to do something different. This is what I'm into. I would encourage people to get out there, try different things, take lessons, network, meet people, check out different styles of things and just learn. Like traveling is really good for that, right? Traveling, whether it's in the US or internationally, both. And that way you're going to be turned on to you're always learning. You're always learning about stuff. Never stop learning. And you really can pursue things like music and have a really full, busy life and balance it out. And I'm living proof. I'm doing it. Maybe I'm not only supporting myself through music and I'm not 100% just playing with some famous band or something, but I'm living a music rich life that's great. That's fun in addition to my day job as a technician and having a family and all. And it's all good if you keep trying and pursuing it, and it's going to happen. It just takes time.
Spoken like a true prodigy. Well, I always did throw in the little part about the whole thing with COVID at the end, but that's normally what I always alluded to because unfortunately the questions are always a little out of place. That's why I say they're not in any particular order.
Yeah.
It was meant to be like the question before that was meant to be related to COVID, and then that one was supposed to kind of wheel in to kind of give some sort of happy message afterwards. Because normally when you think of a story, it's meant to at least have a happy message because people don't really like the bittersweet or maybe the darker endings or that sort of thing, unless it's like a video game, which like does a variety of endings, to be honest, too. So I don't know, or unless they did it completely wrong, I don't know. But that's kind of the whole thing too. So
well, you could choose your own ending, right? In this situation too.
That's right.
You could choose the happy ending, or you could choose the other one, or one of four, right? Like whatever it is.
Something like that, yeah. So that's so true. I know we did have a lot to talk about too, but normally when we reach the 2 hour mark, that tends to be where I draw the line. But
this has been a long time, a lot to talk about. It's been a good conversation, though.
So much so, I think we're going to have to do a part 2 at some point in the near future. So I have to keep you informed since it looks like we could have talked maybe for 3 hours. I don't know how those people do it because I draw the line after 2, to be honest. So
yeah, that's a long time. 2 hours is a long time.
Oh, yeah. So I guess, Eric, we reached in my podcast right here. Did you have any final words or any shout-outs you want to give before we close?
Just thanks to all my friends and family for doing what you do and being out there, and thanks for you for inviting me to this podcast and all and reaching out. I was really surprised when you did. And I'm glad you did. This has been great. Thank you.
It was 50-50. It was either you said yes or I said no. So, but thank you so much for coming on. It's good to have you on here, mate. And
all right.
You
take care.
I wanted to say these last few conversations have at least gone pretty far too. So I think at some point we will do a part 2. So I know I mentioned it earlier, but we will do a part 2 at some point. Whenever we
all right, cool. That sounds good. I'm up for it.
And I guess where can people reach you in terms of social media outside of your YouTube channel?
I'm also on Facebook. I have a Facebook page. That's my main presence, I think, mostly. I'm on Instagram and Threads and Twitter as well, but Facebook's probably the main place somebody could reach me outside of YouTube.
All right, sounds good.
Just under my name.
Okay, I see. Yeah, and most people like to try to use like a fancy pen name at some points, or we can say like an internet name because I don't know. We just still call it a pen name if it's like, I don't know, something King Kong or something like that.
Right.
Something like that. I don't know.
Well, it's like that Steely Dan song where it says you change your name, like, Marilyn Monroe or whatever. People came up with a different name, but stage name. But I didn't do that.
Yeah. Stick to who you are. So, all right. Everyone, my guest today was Erick Cohn. Erick Cohn hailing from Washington. He's actually in the Seattle area. So if you guys see him, make sure to hit him up. This guy's doing wonders out in the world today. Make sure you go hit him up on the socials and everything too. Erick, you stay safe.
You stay safe too. All right. Take care. Thanks.